Thank you, Congressman. We are a country with no barriers to success. Your dreams have a chance. Time our immigration system pulls us into the 21st century and not behind. Enforcement and border security are crucial, and this is a terrific opportunity to get that done. Helen Kriebel's idea of the red card, the temporary work permit, is a critical component to solve the problems dealing with immigration and business needs. Taking advantage of foreign-born university students is also a great opportunity to have top talent meet business demands. It would be a mistake to let those who violated the law have preference over those who have followed the law and come here legally. Those who have not followed the law can be offered a fair chance to redeem themselves. Conservative principles work, and they should be applied towards immigration reform. And now we start the conversation. And so I ask you all, we hear such terrific solutions to a very complex problem. So what's the problem of getting it implemented? It's not that there is a lack of great ideas as to how to solve the problem. Is it just a problem of lack of a political will, or is it a problem because the same old who revisited us and gave us, doomed the prospects for serious immigration reform in 2007 are back once again? Congressman, how about that?
Well, Jennifer talked about this, and it's so important for us to understand. The Democratic Party has a problem right now. They have to pick between their two favorite children. They have to pick between the Hispanic groups and the labor unions. And every time they have to make that decision between those two groups, they actually pick the labor unions every single time. The recent immigration reform did not work in 2007. It was pretty simple. There was a Durbin Amendment that was supported by Senator Durbin and then Senator Barack Obama. Senator Barack Obama voted for the amendment. It was 49 to 48 that it passed in the Senate. And everybody knew that if that amendment passed in the Senate, it was going to kill any kind of immigration reform deal. It passed the Senate. It passed, by just one vote. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the Democrats and the president in particular, who voted for that amendment as a senator, is going to be willing to actually have a robust guest worker program. That's the only way we're going to fix this problem. We fixate on the 12 million. To me, the question is not the 12 million. What do we do with the 12 million? To me, the question is, what do we do to have an immigration system that is workable for the 21st century? We don't have an immigration system that works that way, and the only way we can do that is by having a guest worker program that allows willing workers and willing employers to be able to work together. Helen's idea is a good idea. I'm not sure that that's the only solution, but we have to have a guest worker program. Republicans will not support any immigration reform without a vibrant guest worker program for the future.
And yet when we look at this issue and we see that the guest worker program needs to be a component issue, for an important component, then you do have those who say, well, citizenship needs to be equally component. Is citizenship and federal programs such as welfare programs, are those the poison pill of 2013? Anybody?
Well, I think that the reason why I talked about the 5 different components is that you have to address all 5 components. Otherwise, there's a gaping hole in our system. And so I think that the earned legal status that we talk about should be one of the last things that we address, because we have to fix the system that is broken right now.
So Jennifer, let me just, okay, so the fact that we have, in today's day and age, when we know that security is a big issue, 12 million people whom the federal government can't account for them, supposedly. We don't know who exactly we are, though we as a community do know who they are, and we also know who's employing them. We don't know who they are, and that's not part of as critical an issue as border security?
No, it absolutely is part of it. What I'm saying is that we have to, and the federal government doesn't have, the American people don't have the confidence in the federal government to do the job. And in 1986, when Ronald Reagan actually passed true amnesty, there wasn't a follow-up to securing the border and fixing the legal system. And so because of that, we now have to propose something that truly secures the border and that has a legal way for people to come through. And when there are certain things that are put into place, we call them triggers, then earned legal status can begin. But until then, you're not going to gain the confidence of American people that you're going to actually do those things first.
What do we mean by, Congressman, what do we mean by border security? And why is the border only the southernmost border of the country, and why does it not address the northern border as well?
It's actually
or the water. Florida's a peninsula.
Yeah. It's not the southern border. We need border enforcement. We also need interior enforcement. And what Jennifer's saying is so key. The American people are a fair people. They have no problem with figuring out what to do with the 12 million. But the problem is that we keep emphasizing the 12 million. That's not really the problem that we have with immigration. The problem is, what do we do about security? What we need to have is we need to finish the fences that were promised to the people at the border. We need to have interior enforcement so the local law enforcement agencies can actually do the work that they need to do. But we also need to have things like E-Verify and other things that some of it will be self-enforcement at the employment level. So if we figure out what to do first with the enforcement, if we use those as triggers in order to get us to the legal status for the people that are here illegally, this is our golden opportunity as conservatives to actually get the immigration system that we need.
Dan Garza.
The Congressman is absolutely right. This is a golden opportunity where I think we can have smart and effective policy. It seems to me that the political posturing has been on the other side, where they have sort of dug in on one policy prescription, which is a straight path to citizenship. And yes, it may have a desired political outcome. That's part of the problem, that they're unwilling to compromise because they continue to use this as a wedge issue instead of getting to the solution. And so millions of people are suffering because of it. Our economy is hindered because of it. Families remain divided, and nobody will come to the middle on the other side. And that was the issue the other time, the last time around. And I'm concerned that reasonable people who have now offered up solutions, like the Congressman, who are willing to come to the middle and compromise, we're not going to see that on the other side, again, for political posturing, and we're going to have nothing. And if in this time around we don't achieve immigration reform that is sensible and market-based, I don't know if we're going to have this conversation again for a long, long time to come.
And yet, Whit Ayers, you were talking about that, and one of the things that we need to be looking at is that you said we need more allies, and we need to have a different message, not varying from the principles, but the tone needs to be different. My sense is that if you had an opportunity to be able to speak in Spanish, you would frame this debate in a way that perhaps others haven't done so. Well, how would that be?
Helen, I've talked with a lot of conservatives since the election in November, and I have seen a remarkable willingness to at least address this issue in an open-minded and fair manner that is consistent with our principles. People understand the need for more allies, and they also understand the need for a different tone. You cannot run against a group of people and hope to have those people turn around and support you. And the idea that we can use harsh tones against the undocumented without affecting how the people who are American citizens look at us is delusional. It is just delusional. So we have to have the tone that Ronald Reagan demonstrated. We have got to reach out and say, listen, anyone who shares our principles, anyone who shares our belief in free markets and individual liberty and personal responsibility, we want you as part of this team. And we want you to fall in with us and create a better America. I know that we've got an opportunity now. A number of our clients, particularly in the Senate, are very open in a way that they have not been in years to putting together a package that I hope most of us would feel is fair. I certainly hope that the principles that Helen and others have mentioned on the temporary worker program will be a key part of that. But I am more optimistic than I have been in a decade that we can actually get something done.
Helen Kriebel, what's the feedback that you're getting from your proposal? Are you as optimistic as Wood Ayers?
Well, I go back to what you said, which is there the will to actually pass something? I have yet to meet a person who doesn't like the red card plan, work permit plan, and yet people are not putting it forward. They are not dedicating themselves to getting an efficient guest worker program done. And you know, when we talk about things like the undocumented have to pay back taxes, if you would just think about, say the person's been here 20 years. He's earned $30,000. Now he has to pay the taxes for 20 years ago, plus the IRS interest. Now let's compound that annually to the point of today. So his little back taxes and a penalty will be $500,000. Is he going to pay it back? Is he going to be able to do that? No, he's not. So let's be realistic about what we expect. And the second thing I'd like to mention is we always talk about students who overstay or visas, people who come on tourist visas. If this card is part of any employment thing, it doesn't matter how you came here. If you haven't been through a security check and you don't have a job, which is proved by a red card, you will not be hired. Who in their right mind would hire an undocumented person who's here illegally if you have ready access to legal workers? So you don't have to worry about that separation. The federal government doesn't need a role. This will solve that problem. And that's what we need. We don't need E-Verify. We need something very simple like this that is doable, that's private sector, and stays away from government control of visas.
Congressman.
I just want to ask Helen a question. How do you determine the number of guest workers? You said something in your speech about we'd let the free market. Can you be more specific about how you determine that number?
An employment agency and so on.
If there are jobs going begging in the United States, why don't we fill them if there are willing workers who will take them and do it in a legal, transparent way? When you establish quotas, like I hire H-2B workers. I've been involved in this personally for 20 years. My heart is in it. I am passionate about the workers who come. I live in Colorado. There are 66,000 H-2B workers in the United States, visas. I truly believe Colorado needs 150,000. What happens? People know that the jobs on the ski slopes, in landscaping, in construction, in agriculture are there going begging. How do you think those jobs get filled? How do you think people think about that? They think if I can get there, there's a job waiting for me. This is senseless, absolutely senseless. Quotas do not make sense. Government does not know how many jobs are needed in different areas of the private sector. The private sector knows. And that's what I mean by saying, let the market work. The market is amazing.
Helen, if I can just interrupt you for a minute. It has to be a process that's somewhat flexible.
Very flexible.
If it's very rigid, then especially for temporary work, well, temporary work might mean you might be employed for just a very short period. It might even stop earlier than you had anticipated because business isn't going the way anticipated, or it could even extend longer. So there has to be some flexibility in the process.
And it may be 100,000 PhDs that are needed by Silicon Valley. It doesn't matter. If the job is there and it's going begging and there are people who want to fill that job for us, let's make the match.
I have, I'd like for Dan and Jennifer to look at this issue. It seems to me that, as a journalist covering this national story, there are two broad generalizations that are made. Number one, Hispanics don't care about law and order. And number two, Republicans really hate Hispanics or Latinos. Jennifer.
Well, it's a myth that Hispanics want open borders. I mean, when criminals, true criminals that come over, drug traffickers, human traffickers who come and who are Hispanic, they prey on the Hispanic community. And so, I mean, working across the aisle with Democrats, Independents, Republicans, if you're Hispanic, you also want a secure border too. You want a fair system. So that's just a myth. And the fact that conservatives I think, like Hispanics. But like I said before, the tone and the rhetoric in the past couple of years has really impacted the Hispanic community. You take that with the Democrats sort of seizing on some of that rhetoric and then using it against us, then you have a problem. I'm from California originally when Pete Wilson first put in Prop 187. Now 60% of Hispanics actually voted for Prop 187. But what the Democrats were able to do, and the tone and some of the verbiage that was used on our side, was be able to be used against us, and it continues. And same thing with SB 1070 in Arizona. You can be conservative and be for immigration reform and still not have the harsh tones and the rhetoric. And to that point, on our website, HispanicLeadershipNetwork.org, we put together the do's and don'ts, no matter where you stand on immigration, on how to talk about it, so that you could be totally, not harsh to the Hispanic community. Because when we talk about it and you're talking about deporting someone's grandmother, they think that you don't like them. And so we can change that, because conservatives do agree with, or Hispanics do agree with us on many issues, the economy, education, healthcare, but they're not listening because of the harsh tone on immigration.
Congressman, would you go ahead? I'm sorry, Congressman.
I just want to, I know tone is important, but we need to stop flagellating ourselves. Okay? The President of the United States voted for an amendment that killed immigration reform, and yet he got 75% of the Hispanic vote. So we need to stop blaming ourselves for this problem. We need to be the party of ideas. We need to be the party of actually solving things.
Congressman,
So,
I'll take just
let me just finish. Let me just finish, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Ronald Reagan was able to accomplish conservative things by speaking in moderate tones. That's something that we can do as Republicans much more effectively. The problem with the modern Republican Party is that you have a bunch of Republicans who speak like conservatives and act like moderates. We need Republicans who can speak like moderates and act like conservatives.
Absolutely.
So let's stop blaming ourselves. Let's just be a party of action. Let's fix this immigration problem, and let's stop talking about the rhetoric. I think it's important that we have better rhetoric, but you have 5 Republicans who have bad rhetoric. The rest of them are actually pretty good about what we're saying about the immigration issue. So let's stop talking about this and let's get it done.
So the Republican Party doesn't have a branding problem on this issue?
Because the media, because we keep talking in panels about spending 30 minutes in a 1-hour panel talking about the rhetoric when we're talking about 5 people in our party. Let's stop talking about it and let's just actually get immigration reform done.
Well, if
and
it's
we
5,
will be successful.
I would suggest to you that if it's only 5 people of the party, identify those 5 people and then speak aspirationally. Because maybe the aspirational part, and this is former Florida Governor Jeb Bush saying it,
Yeah.
the party needs to be more aspirational in its message.
I agree with him 100%.
Dan Garza.
I think this notion from the liberal side, or this picture that they've painted that conservatives do not care about minorities, is defamation of the worst kind.
Absolutely.
It's almost evil. I am unapologetically conservative, and I'm proud of my conservative values and the values that my parents inculcated in me and the ones that I'm passing on to my children. I am conservative because I believe that the fastest way to get those at the bottom up the income scale is through free markets, free enterprise, limited government, sound money, free trade, risk-taking, entrepreneurship. The true heroes of the economy are businessmen, businesswomen who risk money. I'm tired of this game that somehow minorities who sign up as conservatives don't care about their own. That is ridiculous. And that's offensive to me. I care about my community deeply, which is why I'm a conservative and which is why I'm involved in advancing public policy. Thank you. Would
anybody disagree that when it comes to immigration reform, family reunification needs to be removed as the primary way to have immigrants come into the country, as primary motivation? Or let's put it this way, does everybody agree that family reunification should no longer be the priority?
I disagree with that. I just think we need to emphasize our skills needs more. I don't think we need to de-emphasize family reunification, but I do think we need to emphasize our needs in the market more.
I think there needs to be a balance.
Yeah.
Because right now it's, like I said, 7% are coming for work, 90% are coming for family reunification, and so it needs to be balanced.
So does this mean we raise the number of immigrants who come legally to the country, including that process, or do we keep it at more or less the same number? Approximately 1 million are immigrants come legally to the country every year. Is that number the right number?
Well,
and if it isn't, then family reunification then needs to be reworked so that it's done as Jennifer
We may need
suggests.
to do both. There's some categories right now that currently exist that just don't make any sense. There's an adult sibling category that takes 20 to 30 years for people to come to the United States. That's not family reunification where you're saying that I have to have all of my siblings in the United States. I don't think that category should exist. The other category is the diversity visa. We have 55,000 visas that is just a visa lottery. All of a sudden, luck of the draw, you decide who comes to the United States. Those are categories that we can remove and add additional high-skilled workers or temporary workers. But we don't need to de-emphasize, I think, the other family reunification like children and spouses. We should always encourage children and spouses to be with their families.
Whittiers, what is the likelihood that we are going to see, in your best estimation today, because you can't speak for tomorrow maybe, what's the likelihood that we're going to see immigration reform in 2013?
Better than it's been in 10 years. I don't know that I can give you a probability, but I do know that some of the members of the Gang of Eight in the Senate are very optimistic that they will be able to put together a bill that will gain about half the Republican votes and almost all the Democratic votes, which would mean somewhere around 70 to 75 votes coming out of the Senate. If they're able to do that, it would have a whale of a head of steam going into the House, and it would provide a lot of cover for those in the House who find a vote for immigration reform difficult. That may be on the optimistic side, but I will tell you that there's some people deeply involved in this in the Senate who believe that can happen.
Congressman Labrador, same question. What's the likelihood that we're going to see immigration reform this year, 2013?
I think it's the highest that we've had in a long time. I think we are very optimistic. I actually think the House is going to actually be more proactive than the Senate, and you're going to see that in the near future. But the question again is whether we can actually overcome the power of the labor unions in the Senate.
So the labor unions continue, and Helen, I would imagine, Helen Kriebel, I would imagine the labor unions aren't quite as thrilled with your temporary work program. Have you gotten any feedback from them at all?
We haven't, no, none. Because we focus, though, on guest worker permit program, I think the pitfall that I'm seeing developing on almost all sides is picking winners and losers. And that frightens me because it's very un-American. We don't pick winners and losers. We don't say, okay, we're going to raise the visas for the highly educated. Okay, we're going to raise visas for agriculture. We're going to raise visas for dreamers. And everybody else can suffer. That is not the American way. All men are created equal. Let's fix the problem across the boards. Then I think at least this piece can get done. Citizenship has always polarized us. It has always caused major immigration bills to come down. Let's get something done. If we end this year without having passed an important bill, we will all be deeply grieved, and the guest worker permit piece is a piece that consensus can be done. It is the cornerstone of any immigration bill.
Congressman.
I just saw a poll this morning that said that even though there's differences between the parties as to how to solve the immigration problem, if we don't fix the immigration problem this year, it says 79% of the American people, Republicans and Democrats, are going to be upset.
And what does that mean for 2014? because people are looking
Yeah.
at 2014.
Absolutely. So I think it's imperative that we get something done this year.
I think what's important to point out is that conservatives and Democrats are working together on a solution, and that having conservatives at the table is very important so that it is a conservative solution. And what we need to watch out for are two things: big labor and President Obama using this as a wedge issue for 2014 and him being the barrier and then trying to blame conservatives, which is why it's so important, as Congressman Labrador says, is to be part of the solution and to put forward our ideas. Because really what I foresee, if this does fall apart, it will be because of the president.
Jennifer, is the citizenship component as critical to Hispanic groups? And I'm saying Hispanic groups because this is the voting bloc. It's the largest minority. It's the voting bloc that people are really going after, trying to appeal to. And it's not an insignificant one. Is the citizenship a make or break issue, or is residency, permanent residency, just as viable an issue?
Right. Well, with the Hispanic community, I mean, we're not monolithic, and it varies from the different parts of the country, from Florida to the Southwest to Texas, on where Hispanics stand. But I can tell you that the Hispanic community are pretty open to earned legal status, and we have told them, especially if they're on the more liberal side, that it is their job to hold their president accountable to not use this as a political issue and to actually get something done, because a lot of the groups that we've talked to, unless they're being disingenuous, are fine with an earned legal status and don't want it to break apart because of citizenship.
Dan, ladies first. Do you mind if I let Helen Kriebel? Helen, go ahead.
I just would like to ask everybody, if you have earned legal status, how many government monitors for whether you fulfilled this earned status or that qualification? Remember that in Obamacare, it's 17,000 new IRS agents just to find out whether the young people have bought their insurance. If we don't want government to expand, we need to leave it to the private sector. We cannot decide what makes you earning your citizenship or not. It's endless expansion of government.
Thank you, Helen. Dan.
To your question, I don't know of many folks who are here currently unauthorized who would say it's citizenship or nothing. Yeah. There's a word in Spanish, it's called permanencia. And I'm not talking about permanent residency. Permanencia is the certainty that you won't be deported tomorrow. It's just you'll be around tomorrow to be here with your children. And so if you were going to ask, well, let's at least get legality, at least let's get authority to remain in the country and work and provide for our children, I think that's going to be the preference. And I think that's where, the compromise is, where we can come together on, as opposed to, again, digging in your heels and, getting this citizenship that may not be politically viable. I think we need to be a little bit astute about that. So, the businessman, to Helen's point, they also seek certainty in the market, how much they're going to be taxed next year, how much they're going to be regulated. And so in the community, in the Hispanic community, we also seek those kind of certainties too. So I think it is going to be important that at least we come out with something. At minimum, let's achieve legality. And I think everybody would agree with that in the community of folks who are here unauthorized.
Whit, you were talking so much about the importance of, resurrecting the party to have a different message. Part of the challenge is that everybody has, and I would, agree with Jennifer that there's a stereotype that Hispanic voters Hispanics are not monolithic. It's a heterogeneous group with different components. So how do you resurrect the message, and what's the different message that you think needs to be made clear to be able to strengthen conservatives and strengthen the party?
Within the Hispanic community, it's important to remember that the number one issue is jobs and the economy. It's not immigration reform. But immigration reform is a threshold issue. We've got to get it right on immigration before Hispanic voters will listen to us on jobs and the economy or taxes or anything else. There's an old saying in politics, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And immigration is that threshold issue for a great many Hispanic citizens. That's one reason why I think it's so important to get it right so we can open ears and open minds to the Republican message on so many other things regarding jobs and the economy and taxes and individual liberty. So we need to get immigration reform right, and then we need to reach out in a very aggressive manner. We've seen how it works. George W. Bush did it in 2004. He got 44% of the Hispanic vote. He got a majority of the Hispanic vote in the Sun Belt, in part because he reached out very aggressively. He took his campaign into the Hispanic community. He had a sympathetic message, and it works. We can do much, much better in the Hispanic community than we did in 2008 and 2012. And if we do, we'd stand a very good chance of winning the 2016 presidential election.
Dan.
Let me just throw out a quick stat. Texas went 55% for George Bush in 2004. In 2008, McCain got 35%. In this year's election, or this past year's election, 20% from Hispanic community in Texas. That shows the decline. When we neglect the community, when we're not in the community, then you're going to have these kind of results, and we cannot continue that direction.
And of course, Helen, with your plan as an important component, we look at, when we talk about the community, it broadens what the community means.
Indeed. But I think my message to all of us is new immigrants, no matter who they are, tore themselves out of their country, gave up their languages, gave up their friends, their culture, their country to come here. They came for freedom and opportunity. It is new immigrants who understand what America is about and who can join with us to save America, to return us back to the principles of our founding fathers. That is a charge I would love to see Hispanics and other new immigrants take on. They can do it. They can help us.
And Jennifer, this can be done, and it would be a welcome message, but there are a few critical challenges.
I'm sorry.
This is something that can definitely be done. Hispanics do want immigration reform. They do want law and order. They do want equality of opportunity, but there are clearly some challenges.
There's some challenges, but I don't think all is lost. Like I said, we were at 44% in 2004 with President Bush, so the right candidate, the right messenger can absolutely reach out to the community. And the biggest part, the biggest barrier is just truly engaging with the community. Like Dan says, we have to be in the communities talking to people about our issues, about what we care about, because they do care about those same issues.
And Congressman, last word goes to you. Clearly, you are a member of the Hispanic American community, and yet as a U.S. Congressman, you represent all. Yours is the type of voice that could be critical in this conversation.
The important thing, at the age of 13, I became a Republican. I became a Republican because I had a Democratic mother. She was a single mom. That she and I moved from Puerto Rico to Las Vegas. She decided that she wanted to register to vote. And at the time, it was 1981, and she registered as a Republican. She registered as a Republican even though she had been a JFK Democrat her entire life. And she registered as a Republican because she believed the Republican Party was a party of ideas, and she believed that Ronald Reagan was a good president who was making America a stronger nation and was making the world a stronger world. It's time again that Republicans become the party of ideas and that we elect men and women who can inspire single women from Puerto Rico to become Democrats, who can inspire young people to become Republicans, not Democrats, young people to become Republicans. And it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, what your background, what your marital status, anything about you, that you want to become a Republican because you believe that we can make America stronger, better, and the envy of the world again. So thank you very much.
And I think it's extraordinary, and thank you to CPAC for having this panel. I can't think of a better group of men and women to come together to discuss this important issue. And thank you so much to Al Cardenas and CPAC for hosting this event and for inviting me to be a moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in thanking this wonderful panel for this conversation this morning.